Listen, whether you're eating curry chicken, pancit, pasolas, or you're snacking on some jollof rice, whatever you are consuming right now, I need you to grab your bowl and pull up because we got to talk. Why did it take this person so long? People are questioning their motives for coming out now. Is it the money? Is it the publicity? Do they want attention? But it's just really important for every single sexual violent crime survivor to know it is never, ever, 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 ever your fault. I was supposed to be resting today, taking a day off, but I had to hop on because there's way too much going on and we need to talk about it. So let's talk. So, as you guys know, there's a lot going on in the news right now. Lots of just unbelievable, tragic circumstances. Individuals who are sharing their histories of trauma, court cases, name it, everything is going on. But I've been in those comments because we're always interested in what you have to say and what your thoughts are. And y'all are saying a whole lot. And when it comes to, some of you may know, some of you may not know, before I even became a physician, I was still on the road to becoming where I am now. I was a rape crisis counselor. And even since then, through my profession, my day-to-day life, I deal a lot with survivors and current victims of sexual violent crimes. So because I've been in the comments and we're seeing what everybody had to say, I needed to come here to kind of help us reset a little bit. There's just too much false information going on. I need to hop on to let y'all know what really are the statistics when it comes to sexual violence crimes and sexual assault survivors. I'm not going to go into today the different types of sexual violence. I think for the most part, we all kind of have a sense, even though we probably should talk about some of the more subtle instances where people don't really particularly know or realize. So one area I do want to touch on before I get into what y'all have been saying on these internets, I want to talk about the technological portion of sexual violence. So what a lot of people don't realize is that the use of technology to harass, to make someone uncomfortable, to give sexual advances that are unwanted, to send blank pics of any kind is in the realm of sexual violence via technology. So don't get yourself caught out there thinking it's cute, thinking it's trending, because you may get yourself caught out there in somebody's jail cell. So if somebody is not interested in you, it did not invite you to engage in any type of sexual communication via technology, whether it's by social media or whether it's by text messaging or email, do not send them unsolicited sexual innuendos, pictures, whatever the case may be. You could potentially be committing a crime. And I know these laws vary from state to state, and these laws vary from country to country. I at least want to bring that to your attention because I think most people are very knowledgeable about the major sexual crimes, but I think a lot of people are not familiar with these more nuanced areas, may in fact be committing crimes out of ignorance. I mean, why are you sending those pictures? Why are you sending those emails? Y'all, we can do better. We know better, right? Like information is out there. We know better. So because we know better, we can automatically do better. But let's talk about how y'all are hating, not all of y'all, but some of y'all are hating on potential sexual violent victims. And this is unacceptable. So one of the biggest questions that is constantly being asked on these internet streets or frequency waves is why did it take this person so long? And in this day and age, I'm surprised that we're still asking these questions. Okay, let's be real, you guys. Some of us have had childhood traumatic experiences that we're still dealing with in adulthood. Some of us are even just realizing that our experiences were traumatic, right? So needless to say, to get to the point where you would even share it with somebody else, needless to say, the entire public. Could you imagine? So why are we able to give such grace to those areas when we talk about other type of violence and traumatic experiences, and we're able to say, oh yeah, you've got to heal from it as an adult, or you got to know that that was traumatic as a child and you got to address it as an adult. But then when someone comes forth and they share that they have been a victim of a sexual violent crime, people are questioning their motives for coming out now. Is it the money? Is it the publicity? Do they want attention? And it's just the fact that we don't realize that two things could be happening. We can be indirectly, and B, directly re-victimizing victims. So let's talk about that part. And I know this is a heavy topic for the holidays, but we've got to talk about it because it's just the trends of these comments is just, we've got to stop. So one of the things that people don't realize is one of the hesitation for victims to come forward is the fact that they feel that the system re-victimizes them, that they have to undergo some type of exposure or process that they feel is re-traumatizing. And it's one of the main reasons people do not come forth with their sexual violent experiences or other types of traumatic experiences. So when someone actually finally finds the courage to come forth, to then have the public response be that they are questioning the motives. If there's any possibility that you can be wrong, please hesitate from posting things like that that could be re-traumatizing and re-victimize someone directly. Now, let's talk about the indirect, which I think we don't often think about. We have to think about how we can be potentially indirectly re-traumatizing or re-victimizing someone that we don't even know is a victim of sexual violence. So let's talk first about the numbers, because that would give a clear indication that probably most people around you or most people on these social media streets are probably sexual violent crime victims and survivors. So according to the CDC, over 50% of women in the United States will experience some type of sexual violent crime in their lifetime. And 1 in 3 men as well. So that tells us a large percentage of our population will encounter either directly through their own personal experience or by knowing someone who has experienced a sexual violent crime. And these numbers are very similar in other countries. So it doesn't matter whether it's US or when we're talking about Australia or the Philippines or Canada or India, these numbers are still high in almost every country. So that being said, what happens when we are commenting on these internet freeways, on these social media platforms, and we're questioning someone who is disclosing that they were a victim, is that other victims who may be contemplating whether or not they should report their crime, go forth and share their story, is now seeing how the public is treating that particular person. And it will result in the potential of people then withdrawing some more and not wanting to disclose, not wanting to get help, or not wanting to speak out and share their own story as a part of their healing journey. And I know some people have already said, I know people have already come up with all these possible motives as to why people are disclosing now. But again, as I've already shared, some of us are still dealing with our childhood traumas. So how can we question someone who may have had an adulthood trauma in adulthood, still dealing with that adulthood trauma? So let me give you another statistic that is mind-blowing. According to the CDC, 4 out of 5 females report that their sexual violent crime occurred before age 25. So either in their youth or in their very young adulthood. So that being said, another statistic tells us 60 to 80% of those who experience a sexual violent crime in their youth will not seek help or report it until their adulthood. And sometimes never at all. So stop asking, it's taking people so long to come forward with what happened with them and start embracing them, even with the possibility that you truly in your heart of heart believe that there was some ulterior motives. So let's talk about that part. So people are always questioning people's ulterior motives when it comes to a delayed time frame, especially when it comes to public figures or celebrities, or a politician or whatever the case may be. So let's talk about what is the likelihood that someone is falsifying their experience. So we have known for a very, very long time that it is hard. It is absolutely incredibly hard for people to come forward to share their sexual violent experiences. But also keep in mind that certain populations, there are additional barriers that lead to a delay in them reporting these crimes. And thankfully, in some states, there is no statute of limitation, but there are in other states. So you want to check the laws in the state where you are. But for people who are of minority populations, where access to mental health is already and very well known to be limited, right? So we know that people of color are less likely, especially Black people, are less likely to seek help because of the stigma that still exists in our communities, and are less likely to have access to help because of the low numbers of culturally competent mental health therapists that exist. So not only does the experience itself become a blockade in someone's even personal emotional journey, being a potential hurdle in disclosing and reporting, but also societal structures, the system of mental health therapy, the system of crime reporting, and the relationship of especially Black people with law enforcement. These are a multitude of barriers that further delay Black people, especially, from going forth and revealing and disclosing their experience. So think about it. Black people have had traumatic experiences with law enforcement. We live in underserved communities where access to healthcare, especially culturally competent healthcare, is limited. And then the societal pressures and stigma that still exists when it comes to mental health disorders and disclosing traumatic experiences. And then layer on top of that, what we have already discussed in our platform, the already sexualization of Black and Latina girls and women and men and trans community. And so when you have these experiences, then it's going to take much longer for someone who is Black or Latina or other minority populations that have other societal barriers to come forth and disclose their experiences. Are we on the same page with that? Have we all understood that not everybody have the same access or relationship with law enforcement and may not come forth in a time frame that you feel is acceptable because you're projecting on them what you think it's like to be a survivor of a sexual violent crime. So can we all be on the same page and say, if you have not experienced a sexual violent crime, if you have not known or witnessed someone's recovery through a sexual violent crime or beyond a sexual violent crime, then we should not be telling anybody when they should recover or how they should recover or in what time frame they should recover. It is unbelievable to me that we lack so much empathy. We cannot tell other people how quickly they should heal from anything. E-healing course, even on the physical level, name it. My healing from diabetes, my healing from high blood pressure, my healing from surgery, my healing from heart disease is very different physically from someone else's journey. So why do we anticipate that everyone should heal in a particular pattern when it comes to psychological trauma? Help me understand, y'all. The math ain't math then. So let's talk about these claims of falsified reports, because this is something that is tossed around so many times. And you guys, I am not ignoring the fact that there are falsified reports. And we know traditionally that especially Black men have been victims of falsified and false imprisonment. I am not ignoring that. I'm just saying, let's look at the numbers and see whether or not is of any value to really potentially re-victimize someone that you don't even really know whether or not they're telling the truth or not. And statistically, they're more likely telling the truth. Let me share why. So we know that in 2022, there was 133,294 cases of sexual assault reported in the US. In 2021, it was slightly higher, over 140,000. And in 2020, it was closer to 131,000. So that plus the information I just shared of how prevalent sexual violent crimes are, the math ain't mathing, right? We know that the amount of crimes that are happening on an annual basis tremendously surpass the number of actual reported crimes. So there's a lot of people who are experiencing sexual violence who are not reporting those violent crimes on that in that year that they experienced that crime. And so a lot of people do not acutely report their sexual violent crimes. And we're going to go into all the reasons why, because there's a laundry list of reasons why, for us to be more empathetic as a society to understand why it's so hard to report a crime beyond the obvious. The other thing that people talk about all the time is this falsification of cases. And this is oftentimes when people don't feel comfortable, especially with who is being accused, they automatically will blame the victim of falsifying the crime. So, how true is it that people tend to falsify these types of crimes? Well, it's not that true. According to the National Sexual Violence Resource Center, it's only about 2 to 8% of these crimes are falsified. There was another study done by David Lysak and colleagues looking at a college campus and looking at the rate of falsified reports there, and that rate was as low as 5.9%. There was another study done in Los Angeles based on the Los Angeles Police Department reports, and the number of falsified sexual violent crimes based on that study was 4.5%. So, y'all, the math is mathing, okay? People rarely falsify sexual violent crimes. Can we say that together? People rarely falsify sexual violent crimes. It takes a tremendous amount of courage, strength, fortitude to report a crime that of a sexual violent nature, especially as a public official, a celebrity, a politician, name the list. It is extremely difficult for people in general to report sexual violent crimes, and even more so when you are of a public figure. It is better for us to assume that someone is telling the truth, because statistically, that is more likely, rather than to assume that they're not and they are actually telling the truth. It can re-victimize not just them, but other people who are witnessing their experience as well. Be mindful not just of the person you're talking about, but the people you are talking to and the people who are witnessing what you are saying. The risk and the danger and the consequences of re-victimizing someone publicly just because you feel that they may not be telling the truth has such catastrophic consequences. It is not and never is worth it. And I'm not ignoring that there are some cases of falsified reports and how that impacts the lives of the person that's being accused. I'm not ignoring that at all. What I am saying is statistically, those instances are extremely rare. And based on the information that we have from multiple resources, the likelihood of that is extremely rare. And let's talk about why. Why is it that people take so long to report their experiences? What are some of the hurdles that sexual violent survivors are experiencing that may be a potential block? One of the most common reasons why people hesitate to report being a victim of a sexual violent crime is because oftentimes it is by someone they know. A large percentage of child abuse, adult sexual violent crimes are committed by someone the victim or survivor knows. And so that may lead to a multitude of uncomfortable dynamics. It could be someone's family member in which the disclosing of the issue may have an impact not just on the two individuals, but multitude of individuals and destroy a multitude of relationships in either direction, right? It could be somebody's boss, and the dynamics of someone's career can have a tremendous impact on whether or not they feel comfortable disclosing. Also, it can be someone who is in a role in which their retaliation can make the survivor feel unsafe. A partner, a husband, a wife. Name those intimate relationships where people know so much about you that they're able to hurt you in a very significant way. And this can oftentimes be a block as to why people hesitate to disclose their experiences. Can a partner rape their spouse? Yes. The answer is unequivocally yes. Consent is a requirement for every single encounter. And I know that there are people who have different practice and beliefs, but you need to make sure that if your partner shares the same practice and belief, then they will give their consent, right? So even saying that I have a different religion, I have a different belief, doesn't exempt you from that fact. Because if you have a different religion and belief and your partner agrees to it, then your partner agrees to that. But if your partner does not agree to it and is not practicing the same religion or belief system, and that is an understanding in your marriage, in your partnership, then without their consent, it is still a sexual violent crime. People hesitate to share because of exactly why we're talking about it today. Their fear of not being believed. Sorry, you guys, the take got messed up, but I did mention several subgroups. Black men, especially as a subgroup, hesitate to share these experiences because of all the social stereotypes of Black men, because of the likelihood of being ridiculed, of the questioning of your manhood as a Black man. And so Black men hesitate, especially also, to disclose their sexual trauma or their sexual violent crime experiences because of the fear of not being believed and the fear of being ridiculed or questioned, or their manhood being questioned, which is something we're still working through in our community. But it is a very real fear. People also, as I mentioned, depending on the power dynamics of the assailant versus the victim, there may be some concern for safety, and there may be some concern for retribution. So people, if it's an employment situation, they may fear the loss of their finances and their security and their safety. Some people hesitate to report because reporting has a financial cost, especially if you're reporting and it leads to a court case. The loss of productivity from work is real. The loss of finances, the cost of going through the judicial system. If you don't have the finances, you may be hesitating to disclose. And also the lack of trust in the public defender's system. Like a lot of people, especially in our communities, don't trust that public defenders actually give their cases due diligence, or they feel that public defenders are so overwhelmed with their volume that they can't, even if they wanted to, give their case a due diligence. One of the first questions that's asked, well, what was she wearing? We're still asking these insane questions because we're judging the victims and people fear being judged. And that is a true reality because they are judged. And we see that over and over. People fear being ostracized, especially if it's against someone who is revered or who is honored by society. People fear that being ostracized and being looked at as a sellout, as a tattletale, as a squeal, and there's so much pressure that comes with disclosing. And oftentimes people are concerned also about being labeled, right? They're being labeled promiscuous. And in fact, certain populations, as I mentioned, are already over sexualized. So the labeling of being promiscuous especially if they have a certain lifestyle, is almost inherent, unfortunately. And we're still at a space where people just don't feel that they're safe spaces to share their experience. And they don't feel, and in some cases, they are still self-blaming. Well, because of all these false narratives from society that become ingrained in our spirits, ingrained in our own belief systems, that a lot of sexual violent crime victims start to question, did I do something wrong? Did I deserve it? You know, especially when it comes to religion, sometimes some people have some guilt about their spirituality, and they question, well, did I deserve this? And that is in of itself is a falsity, right? Because we all walk in grace, and that's a whole different conversation that I need to be able to maybe have a platform to talk about that aspect. But it's just really important for every single sexual violent crime survivor to know it is never, ever, 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 ever your fault. Do not excuse your perpetrator by taking on any of the responsibility of something that was done to you and not done by you. As you guys can see, I'm very passionate about this. I hear the multitude of stories, and they come in every single social status, in every single ethnicity, in every single gender identity. There is no exempt community. So it affects just such a tremendous portion of our population. And to think that we've been sharing so much information for decades now on survivorship, on victimization, on the legal system, on societal pressures, and we're still in a position where, to this day, all on social media, people are still victim blaming. People are still proposing that there's some ulterior motives. And it's not to say that you don't have your right to your opinion, because you do. But I would say pause in sharing a particular type of opinion in the setting in which we know you're more likely to be wrong. So what am I saying? What are some of the take home from today? The take home from today is that a lot of people, and likely either yourself or somebody who is close to you, is likely a victim of a sexual violent crime. If you are a victim of a sexual violent crime, as much as I've mentioned all of these barriers and all of these reasons why people hesitate, what is best for you is to seek help. And if you're not finding the right help in the right area, then look somewhere else. Go to trustworthy organizations that are there to help you. Get to the point where you're able to make that reach, and someone will grab your hand. The number that you can call in the United States, and almost every country has a national number, but in the US, that number is 1-800-656-4673. Again, that's 1-800-656-4673. Reach out and someone will for sure grab your hand. The hardest part is the reach. Once you make that reach, you will find a helping hand. And for the rest of us who are witnessing and are hearing and are reading these reports and these posts and these things, err on the side of compassion, err on the side of empathy, err on the side of grace, and know that it is more harmful to doubt someone who is actually telling the truth than to believe someone who isn't. Because it's so hard to come forth, it's so hard to share, it's so hard to disclose, it is very unlikely that someone is going to take those and change their life forever, publicly sometimes. And to do that falsified, to give a false report, is rare. Y'all, this is Dr. T coming to you because y'all know this is my heart, this is my passion. I've seen so many examples of sexual violent crimes, some of the most horrific things I will never be able to share with you because of the privacy of those individuals. But there are things that are happening that you will never, ever want to know. You will never, ever want to experience. You will never, ever want to hear. So believe someone today. Give someone a helping hand. Lead them to get the help that they deserve and need. And for those who are of minority populations, whether it relates to your gender, your sexuality, or your race, make sure that you search for someone who is culturally competent to handle and walk you through this experience. Seek healing as we transition into a new chapter. Let us all, for all that we have experienced, whether it's childhood trauma of any kind, a sexual violent crime, or any type of traumatic or abusive condition, let us all walk in the path of being healed and healing others. This is Dr. T, the hand behind the handle of Healthy Bump Club right here on YouTube. We thank you guys for joining us. Also, make sure you follow us on Instagram at healthybump.club. And on both platforms, either follow or subscribe here on YouTube. We thank you for your support. We thank you for always being an open ear to hear what we're sharing on this platform. We always try to bring you the real raw data, because we know that there's lots of information flowing and not every information is coming from a reliable source. So we do the hard work of making sure we give you the reliable information. We thank you guys for supporting us in however you decide to do so. We wish you an amazing holiday season. We wish you an amazing year ahead. And we hope and pray that we all continue on this journey. See you guys when? Next episode. Ooh, this tea was hot.